Why, if humanity stopped visiting Mars and started communicating there? For decades, every Mars mission followed the same basic idea: build a rocket, launch it once, send astronauts to Mars, then either bring them back or lose the spacecraft forever. But what if we have been thinking too small? What if instead of building a new ship every time, humanity build a permanent bridge between planets, a giant spacecraft that never stops moving, a spacecraft that endlessly cycles between Earth and Mars like a cosmic train route? This is the Aldrin Mars Cycler, a revolutionary idea proposed by legendary astronaut Buzz Aldrin that could completely change the future of space travel. And honestly, it might be the only realistic way humans ever become a multi-planet species. Today we are going to explore how the Aldrin Mars Cycler works, why NASA scientists still take it seriously, and how this giant interplanetary transit system could become the first permanent highway between worlds. The big problem with Mars missions. Let's start with the biggest problem. Mars is unbelievably far away. At its closest points, Mars is around 34 million miles from Earth. But during most launch windows, astronauts would travel much farther than that. And space is brutal. Astronaut needs oxygen, water, food, radiation shielding, sleeping quarters, medical equipment, exercise system, backup systems. Basically a teeny moving civilization. The problem is that every single Mars mission has to carry all of this equipment every single time. And moving heavy things through space is insanely expensive. The more mass you launch, the more fuel you need. And the more fuel you carry, the heavier the spacecraft becomes. It's a nightmare equation. That's why most Mars mission designs become incredibly complicated and expensive. But then Buzz Aldrin proposed something brilliant. Instead of launching the heavy parts over and over again, why not launch them only once? What is the Aldrin Mars Cycler? The Aldrin Mars Cycler is basically a massive spacecraft that continuously travels between Earth and Mars in a repeating orbit around the Sun. Think of it like an interplanetary cruise ship, or even better, think of it like a bus route between planets. The cycler never lands. It never stops. It simply swings past Earth, then Mars, then Earth again, over and over, forever. Small spacecraft act like space taxis. Astronauts launch from Earth in smaller vehicles, dock with the cycler while it flies past Earth, live inside it during the journey, then use another taxi to land on Mars. The cycler itself keeps moving endlessly through the solar system. That means the giant radiation shields, life support systems, sleeping areas, artificial gravity systems, and supplies don't need to be rebuilt every mission. You build the giant ship once, then humanity uses it for decades, maybe even centuries. And this changes everything. The genius of the gravity slingshot. Now here is where things get really crazy. The cycler does not constantly fire giant engines to move back and forth. Instead, it uses gravity itself as fuel, specifically gravity assistance. The same technique NASA uses for deep space probes. The cycler flies close to Earth and Mars at carefully planned angles. The planet's gravity bends the spacecraft's path and redirects it through space like a slingshot. It's almost like stealing a teeny bit of momentum from the planets. And because orbital mechanics are incredibly predictable, the spacecraft can stay on this repeating path for years, maybe forever, with occasional corrections. This is one of the most beautiful ideas in astronautics, because the solar system itself becomes part of the transportation system. The planets are no longer destination, they become moving stations on an interplanetary railways. Why this could make Mars colonization possible? Here is the real reason the Aldrin Mars Cycler matters. It changes Mars from a mission into infrastructure. That is a huge difference. Right now, Mars missions are temporary, but permanent civilization needs permanent systems. Think about Earth. Civilization exploded when humans built infrastructure like roads, railways, shipping routes, airports, internet cables. The Aldrin Mars Cycler could become the first true infrastructure of the solar system. Instead of isolated missions every few years, you could have scheduled departures, regular transportations, cargo systems, passenger systems, eventually entire fleets of cyclers. Imagine hearing this in the future. The next Mars Cycler departs Earth orbit in 6 days. That sounds less like science fiction and more like the beginning of civilization beyond Earth. The insane engineering challenges. Of course, building something like this would be unbelievably difficult. First, the cycler would need incredible radiation shielding. Space between Earth and Mars is filled with dangerous cosmic radiation. Astronauts traveling for months would need serious protection. Second, the ship would probably need artificial gravity. Humans lose muscles and bone density in zero gravity. One solution is rotating sections that creates gravity through centrifugal force. Basically, spinning the spacecraft like a giant wheel. Third, docking would be extremely challenging. Remember, the cycler never fully stops. So, astronauts would need to carefully match speed and position while boarding. It would be like jumping onto a moving train in deep space. And finally, the cost would be enormous, probably hundreds of billions of dollars. But supporters argue something important. Once the system exists, the long-term cost of traveling to Mars could drop dramatically, because you stop rebuilding the same giant spacecraft again and again. Now, NASA, SpaceX, and the future. So, is anyone actually working on this? Well, not directly yet. NASA has studied cycler concept for years, and many aerospace engineers still believe the idea makes long-term sense. Meanwhile, companies like SpaceX are currently focused on direct transportation system like a Starship. But even if Starship succeeds, future Mars colonies may still need something bigger, something permanent, something designed for thousands of people instead of dozens. That's where the Aldrin Mars Cycler becomes incredibly important, because eventually mass transportation may evolve the same way transportation evolved on Earth. First came explorers, then came trade routes, then came permanent infrastructure. And the cycler could become the first true transport network between planets. the bigger meaning. But honestly, the most fascinating part of the Aldrin Mars Cycler is not the engineering. It's what it says about humanity. For most of history, humans lived trapped on one world. Earth was everything. But the moment we build a permanent transit system between planets, human civilization fundamentally changes forever. At that point, Mars is no longer another planet. It becomes connected territory, a second branch of human civilization. And that might become one of the biggest turning points in the human history. The day humanity stopped being a single planet species. So in conclusion, the Aldrin Mars Cycler may sound impossible today, but so did airplanes, so did moon landings, so did reusable rockets. And yet, here we are, a giant spacecraft endlessly cycling between Earth and Mars could one day become humanity's first permanent bridge between worlds. Not just a mission, not just explorations, but a true interplanetary transportation system. And if that future ever arrives, it may all trace back to one incredible idea from Buzz Aldrin, the man who once walked on the moon and then imagined the road on Mars. So, what do you think? Could the Aldrin Mars Cycler actually become the future of human space travel? Or will we find an even more advanced way to connect worlds? Comment below with your thought. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of Mars colonization, make sure to subscribe to PalSaaLab for more videos about space engineering, futuristic technology, and humanity's future beyond Earth. Because the future is not science fiction anymore. It's already being designed.